Why do good men seem to lose? You were taught that if you were kind, patient, attentive, if you always showed up and never made waves, she would love you for it. That being sweet and available would secure her heart. But real life doesn't work that way. The men who give the most are often the first to be left behind. And here's the uncomfortable part. It's not because you're a bad man. It's because you've been playing by rules that don't actually govern attraction. You grew up learning how to be a gentleman. What no one told you is that attraction isn't built on fairness. While you're writing long messages trying to explain yourself, another man shrugs and says, "Do whatever you want." And somehow, he's the one she can't stop thinking about. Why? What does he understand that you don't? There's a hidden language beneath attraction. It has nothing to do with flowers or long apologies. It's about presence. It's about boundaries. It's about power, emotional power. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He didn't write about romance. He wrote about perception and control. He knew that people respond less to intention and more to strength. This isn't about being cruel. It's about being solid. Because respect is never handed to the man who abandons himself for approval. It's given to the man who stands firm, even when it costs him. Most men make the same mistake. They confuse kindness with weakness. They think constant availability proves love. But attraction isn't built on submission. Within seconds of meeting you, a woman isn't measuring how nice you are. She's measuring how steady you are. Can you say no? Do you have standards? Do you hold your posture when challenged? If you don't, what she feels isn't admiration, it's pity. And pity quietly kills desire. Machiavelli once wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both. He didn't mean cruelty, he meant authority. Love without respect turns into imbalance. And in relationships, if you don't define your standards, someone else will. Think about the man who says yes to everything, always available, always adjusting. He thinks he's proving devotion, but what she senses is compliance. And desire doesn't grow from compliance. It grows from emotional strength. Make it practical. She texts you at 2 a.m. knowing you have work early. The anxious man replies instantly, afraid of losing connection. The grounded man responds when it suits his life. Not to punish her, but because his world doesn't revolve around her attention. Every interaction sends a signal. The more you bend to avoid losing her, the less she fears losing you. The harder you try to impress her, the more invisible you become. The more you compromise your principles to keep her happy, the less she respects you. Machiavelli already understood this. The ruler who governs from need eventually loses his throne. The one who governs from strength keeps it. Being loved is pleasant. But if you have to shrink yourself to maintain it, you're trading your identity for crumbs. Here's the painful truth. When interest fades, it's rarely dramatic. She just feels something changed. What changed was your perceived value. You showed her you'd sacrifice your dignity for affection. And once that happens, attraction weakens. Respect isn't begged for. It's inspired. It's inspired when you become a man who can love deeply but won't tolerate disrespect. A man who has a heart and boundary. The man who can look someone in the eyes and calmly say, "This doesn't work for me. I'm leaving, not to hurt her, not to manipulate her, but because he values himself too much to stay where he's not valued." That kind of man creates impact, not arrogance. When she senses that your presence isn't guaranteed, she treats it differently. If you can't control how she perceives you, she controls the emotional dynamic. So stop over-explaining. Stop over-helping. Be fair. Be consistent, but never be desperate. Every act of kindness that costs you your integrity lowers your perceived value. Here's the irony. Only when she respects you can she truly love you. Desire doesn't grow toward the man who gives everything. It grows toward the man who knows his worth and refuses to negotiate it. Look at the men who naturally attract attention. They aren't the ones flooding her with gestures. They're the ones with direction. Men whose lives are moving forward with or without her. They make you wonder, do I have him or do I have to earn it? A woman may appreciate a good man, but she's drawn to a powerful one. Not powerful through aggression, but through self-control, through choosing himself first, through being grounded enough that even disagreement doesn't shake him. Machiavelli never wrote about fairy tale love. He wrote about perception, and perception shapes attraction. In a world full of men trying to please, the man who sets boundaries stands out. No risk, no desire. If something can't be lost, it isn't valued. If your presence is guaranteed no matter what, it becomes background noise. Power isn't about being loved at all costs. It's about knowing what you're willing to walk away from. A prince who cannot imagine losing his throne isn't respected. He's ignored. A man who cannot imagine life without her silently gives her all the power. And when one person holds all the power, desire fades. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you changed your plans for her? How many times have you replied instantly out of anxiety? How many times have you felt uneasy when she didn't respond? You might call it love, but if it comes from fear of losing her, she feels it as desperation, and desperation is never attractive. That urge to always be available, even if you call it love, doesn't always feel like love on the other side. Often, it feels like desperation. Machiavelli warned about this long ago when he said, "He who depends on the will of another has already lost his freedom." In relationships, that translates into something simple and uncomfortable. The moment you need her validation to feel secure, you've handed her the power. And when one person holds all the power, desire fades. Not because she's cruel, but because attraction naturally moves towards strength, not dependence. Biology doesn't look for someone to follow. It looks for someone who stands on his own. The moment you say, "Don't worry, I'll adapt to you," you may think you're being loving. But what you're really communicating is that your direction can be reshaped at her convenience. Real strength doesn't mean instability. It means your presence carries weight. It means you have the ability to step back when you're not valued. You don't threaten, you don't argue. You simply withdraw your attention and continue building your life. Machiavelli described this as creating fear without hatred, a state where you harm no one, but no one feels comfortable losing you. When she knows your time is limited, she treats it differently. Think about luxury. Expensive things aren't valuable only because they're high quality. They're valuable because they're scarce. The same applies to you. If you're always available, your presence loses its impact. But when your life is full, when your time is structured and your mission comes first, your attention becomes meaningful. Imagine two men asking the same woman out. One says, "Whenever you're free, I'll adjust." The other says, "I'm free Thursday from 7 to 9. The difference is subtle but powerful. The first man offers unlimited access. The second offers limited access. And scarcity creates value. This isn't about playing games. It's about having a life that doesn't revolve around her approval. The man who naturally attracts attention isn't ignoring her as a tactic. He's simply busy building something bigger than the relationship itself. His priorities aren't negotiable, and that quiet independence creates a magnetism that doesn't need explanation. Desire grows where there's something to lose. A man who doesn't panic when she pulls away, who doesn't beg for reassurance, who doesn't collapse in her absence, that man stays in her mind. Because uncertainty creates emotional tension, and tension keeps attraction alive. She may forgive mistakes, but she never forgets the moment she realizes she doesn't fully have you anymore. That realization creates awareness, and awareness creates desire. You don't create that by being endlessly available. You create it by having direction, by being a man whose life continues moving forward, whether she's present or not. The next time she calls and you're busy, stay focused. Not to punish her, but because your time matters. If she cancels plans, don't argue or overreact. Return to your world. Let her adjust to your schedule, not the other way around. There's a quiet kind of power in saying, "It's all good," and then disappearing into your purpose. No explanations, no emotional displays, just progress. Machiavelli understood this deeply. The one who controls perception controls reality. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be steady. You don't need to appear invulnerable. You just need to show that your identity isn't dependent on anyone else's approval. Nothing weakens attraction faster than over-explaining yourself. The constant apologies, The endless justifications, the need to be understood at all costs. Because behind that behavior is a silent message, I need your validation. And the more you communicate that need, the less authority you project. Many men believe transparency automatically builds attraction. But what creates attraction isn't exposure, it's depth. There's a difference. Depth invites discovery. Exposure removes mystery. A woman doesn't want to read the entire book on the first page. She wants to turn the pages slowly. She wants to feel like there's more beneath the surface. Machiavelli said people are judged more by appearances than by essence. Not because truth doesn't matter, but because perception shapes emotional response. When she feels like she hasn't fully figured you out, curiosity grows. And curiosity fuels attraction. Imagine she asks why you didn't reply last night. The insecure man rushes to explain every detail, hoping to reassure her. The grounded man simply says, I was busy, calm, direct. No apology for having a life. That response doesn't push her away, it creates intrigue. Because mystery leaves space for imagination. And imagination strengthens emotional investment. This isn't manipulation, it's self-respect. It's protecting your identity instead of surrendering it for approval. Because without tension, attraction slowly disappears. Machiavelli understood something most people never realize. Uncertainty is power. A prince everyone fully understands is predictable. And a predictable prince is easy to control. The same applies to men. The moment you become completely predictable, you become easy to manipulate. Not because you're weak, but because there's nothing left to discover. You should never be fully predictable. You should be the unexpected variable in her mind. This is where strategic silence becomes powerful. Not everything deserves a response. Not everything requires explanation. Sometimes saying nothing communicates more strength than any words ever could. Think back to when you were a child. There were moments when your father didn't need to shout. He simply looked at you and you understood. That quiet authority created respect without force. That's the kind of contained energy that leaves an impression. True masculine presence doesn't beg. It doesn't overshare. It doesn't chase validation. It observes, it waits, and when it speaks with purpose. Silence, when used correctly, isn't indifference. It's control over your narrative, and mystery isn't coldness. It's depth that hasn't been fully explored yet. Now look at your life, especially your online presence. Do you reveal everything? Every thought, every moment, every emotion? If so, there's nothing left to uncover. You've made yourself completely accessible, completely known. But attraction grows in discovery. Your life should feel like a fortress. Some parts visible, others hidden behind doors she hasn't opened yet. She should wonder what drives you, what occupies your mind, what you're building when she's not there. That curiosity keeps her emotionally invested. This isn't manipulation. Manipulation is pretending to be someone you're not. This is simply choosing when and how to reveal yourself. It's emotional intelligence. It's understanding timing. Many men sabotage themselves by revealing everything too early. They expose their fears, their insecurities, their entire emotional world before the connection has earned that level of access. And slowly she begins to pull away. Not because she's cruel, but because the mystery disappeared. Truth has time. And when you ignore timing, you weaken your own presence. Attraction thrives on layers, on the feeling that there's always more beneath the surface. Not secrets born from dishonesty, but depth born from self-possession. When you don't answer every question immediately, when you're comfortable with pauses, when you allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it, you create intrigue, and intrigue fuels desire. When she doesn't fully know what you're thinking, she thinks about you more. When she doesn't feel like she completely has you, she invests more to understand you. This is emotional gravity. You don't need to control her. You only need to control how you present yourself. Because people don't respond to your intentions, they respond to how you make them feel. Machiavelli understood that perception shapes reality. A man can be disciplined, intelligent, and emotionally strong, but if he presents himself as needy, he'll be treated as weak. Another man may have flaws, but if he carries himself with calm certainty, he'll be treated with respect. Because attraction isn't built on what you say about yourself. It's built on what your presence communicates without words. This is why relationships are shaped in the mind before they're shaped in reality. You don't win her through effort alone. You win when your absence carries weight. When she feels your presence even when you're not there. When her emotional experience of you stays alive beyond the moment. Most men believe doing everything right guarantees attraction. But attraction isn't a reward system. It's an emotional experience, and she isn't measuring how much you do. She's measuring how you make her feel. A woman doesn't fall in love with what you do for her. She falls in love with how she feels when she's with you. And if your presence makes her feel like you're always available, always surrendering, always emotionally dependent on her approval, then no amount of success, kindness, or effort will change how she sees you. Because attraction isn't built on your resume. It's built on emotional perception. Here's where most men make their first mistake. They present themselves as the solution. They try to be the rescuer, the emotional support, the one who fixes everything. It sounds noble, it sounds admirable, but underneath, it often feels like neediness. The man who constantly tries to prove his value sends an invisible message. I need to be chosen. The Machiavellian mindset flips that completely. He doesn't present himself as a solution. He presents himself as an opportunity. He isn't trying to complete her life. He's already building his own, and she can be part of it if she adds value. That single shift changes everything. Imagine she asks you, "What are you looking for in a relationship?" The average man says, "Someone who loves me, supports me, understands me." It sounds sincere, but it quietly reveals dependence. The grounded man says, "I'm looking for someone who adds to what I already have. My peace isn't negotiable. Feel the difference. One man is asking to be accepted. The other is deciding who deserves access." And that frame alone reshapes how she sees you. Because attraction doesn't grow toward the man searching for salvation. It grows toward the man who is already complete. The man whose direction doesn't change based on her approval. Another principle Machiavelli hinted at is this. Respect and warmth must exist together. Not fear through intimidation, but firmness through self-respect. Be kind, be emotionally present, but never sacrifice your structure just to keep someone comfortable. Be warm, but not predictable. Be affectionate, but not dependent. She should feel wanted, but never feel like she owns you. Because what can be lost becomes valuable. What must be earned becomes respected. The second mistake most men make is trying to explain their value. They talk too much about their struggles, their achievements, their intentions. They believe more words will create deeper connection. But value isn't explained, it's felt. A truly valuable man doesn't need to convince anyone of his worth. It's visible in how he carries himself, in how he speaks, in how he protects his time, in how he sets boundaries without apology. He doesn't say, "I am valuable." He behaves like someone who knows he is. A valuable man never has to announce his value. He doesn't say, "I'm important." He makes you feel it in the way he speaks, the way he moves, the way he holds eye contact, the way he draws lines without raising his voice. Value is communicated through presence, not proclamation. Take a simple situation. She flirts with another man in front of you. The insecure guy reacts emotionally. He gets jealous, makes a scene, tries to reclaim control. The passive guy says nothing, laughs it off, and swallows the discomfort. But the grounded man, he smiles calmly and says, "Do whatever you want. Just remember, I can choose too." And then he leaves. No shouting, no drama, no pleading. Now she's left alone with her thoughts. Was that confidence? Was that indifference? Was that stress? She doesn't fully know, but she feels it. And she thinks about it long after the moment passes. You didn't create chaos. You created contrast. That's narrative control. You're not manipulating. You're setting a standard and letting your actions enforce it. Here's another example. She expects you to behave like every other man. Text first every morning, respond instantly, chase when she pulls away. Instead, you stay consistent with your life. You don't overtext, you don't complain, you don't rush to fill silence. And suddenly, a question forms in her mind. Why isn't he reacting like the others? That question is powerful because the mind fixates on what it can't fully predict. Machiavelli wrote that anyone who wants to command must understand how to project authority. And authority in relationships isn't loud. It's emotional control. It's composure. The next time you feel the urge to over-explain yourself, pause. When you feel like apologizing for something that doesn't require an apology, breathe. Every unnecessary explanation chips away at your perceived strength. Respect is fragile. It's built quickly through first impressions and lost through subtle over-validation. You are not there to convince someone of your worth. You are there to observe whether they deserve access to it. If she forgets that you are a choice, not a guarantee, it's not because she's unfair, it's because you failed to hold that frame. Project scarcity, not artificial games, but real structure. Let your time be limited. Let your standards be visible. Let your boundaries exist without negotiation. Make it clear through behavior that being with you isn't automatic, it's earned. And understand this, real power isn't about staying at all costs. Real power is knowing you can walk away. Many men think love is proven by persistence, by arguing, convincing, but true strength shows itself in restraint, in the ability to withdraw without theatrics, without bitterness, without begging. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Power is preserved when its loss is feared. The same applies to love. If you cannot imagine letting her go, you've already surrendered leverage. The man who clings, who tolerates disrespect, who stays where there's no reciprocity, he isn't showing devotion, he's revealing dependence. And dependence quietly erodes desire. Lack is the silent killer of attraction. The moment you start chasing validation, begging for reassurance, or holding on tighter out of fear, you communicate something without saying a word. You communicate that you don't believe you're enough on your own. And that's exactly when desire begins to fade. You're not here to convince anyone to stay. You're here to live in such a way that if someone loses you, they feel the absence. Detachment isn't coldness. It's self-respect in its purest form. It's having the strength to look at someone you once cared about deeply and say, calmly and without anger, "This no longer aligns with who I am," and then walking away, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with quiet dignity. Strategic withdrawal is not weakness, it's discipline. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote that wise men don't act when emotion takes over. They act when clarity demands it, because leaving at the right time creates something no grand gesture ever could. Respect that lasts, not loud respect, silent respect, the kind that lingers in memory for years. Because there was no argument, no desperate attempt to hold on, no emotional collapse, just composure, just silence. And silence is powerful, especially to someone who believed you would never leave. Picture this. You're with someone, and slowly things change. She becomes distant. She stops valuing your time. Her replies grow colder. Her effort disappears. The weak man reacts emotionally. He questions, complains, tries to force things back to how they were. The average man waits. He hopes things will magically fix themselves. But the grounded man recognizes the shift and adjusts. He doesn't announce his departure. He doesn't beg for understanding. He simply redirects his energy back to himself and moves forward. And that absence speaks louder than any words ever could. Because now there's no emotional defense, no argument to win, no closure to soften the impact. Just unanswered questions. What happened? Did I lose him? Why didn't he fight to stay? And that mystery becomes your final statement. Machiavelli said a leader should create respect without creating hatred. In relationships, this means leaving in a way that is firm but not cruel, clear but not dramatic. Because true attraction isn't built on how much you tolerate. It's built on what you refuse to tolerate. A man who can let go with the same strength he once held on becomes unforgettable. Not because he played games, but because he proved something rare. He valued himself enough to walk away. And here's the hardest truth of all. The man who loves the deepest isn't the one who clings the hardest. It's the one who refuses to abandon his self-respect. Because real love doesn't require you to shrink. Real love doesn't demand you betray yourself to keep someone else. The strongest position you can never hold is the willingness to leave when staying costs you your dignity. Because the moment you have to beg, chase, or shrink yourself just to keep someone in your life, it stops being a relationship. It becomes dependency. And dependency kills respect faster than anything else. What you want isn't forced presence. You want a woman who understands that your presence is a choice, not a guarantee. A woman who knows that your love is not a cage, but it's not something she can take for granted either. It's a pact, mutual, balanced. And the moment that balance breaks, you have the strength to walk away, not because you feel nothing, but because you feel enough to refuse less than you deserve. Detachment isn't easy. It forces you to confront yourself, your fears, your loneliness, that quiet voice that wonders if you'll ever find something better. But Machiavelli warned of this long ago. He said that a man who isn't prepared to lose will eventually lose his freedom. Because if you're not ready to lose her, she holds all the power. So prepare yourself, not with coldness, but with clarity. Always know where your exit is, not because you expect failure, but because you respect yourself enough to never stay where you're no longer valued. Don't wait until you're broken to say enough. Don't wait until your confidence is destroyed to rediscover your worth. The moment you notice yourself becoming weaker just to keep someone, you've already crossed the line. Yes, it hurts to walk away. But that pain is temporary. Staying where you're disrespected costs far more. It costs your identity. And one day she will remember how you left, not with tears, not with begging, not with anger, just quiet certainty. That kind of exit leaves a permanent mark, because dignity is unforgettable. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be the kind of man who can recognize when something is no longer mutual and have the strength to step away. Because in the end, nothing commands respect more than the ability to leave without asking permission. If you've understood this, then you already see what most men never do. Being kind isn't enough. Being available all the time isn't attractive. Being predictable doesn't create desire. It creates comfort, and comfort without respect slowly becomes indifference. Machiavelli understood something timeless. Respect isn't requested, it's established through how you carry yourself. Desire isn't begged, it's awakened by presence, boundaries, and self-control. And real power was never about controlling someone else. It's about controlling yourself, becoming the man who can love fully, but never at the cost of his dignity. Because that man, whether people admit it or not, is the man they never forget.